time to, because not sure how long this is going to go with the interactive part. So I tried to time it for about 45 minutes, but I have lots of content. So if we need to cut it off for questions, just interrupt me.
Okay, no problem. Okay, well, again, I want to welcome everybody. Thank you guys for joining the TMAA webinar series. We are so glad that you chose to make this part of your day. And this webinar series was designed, created by a meeting with all the county leadership. And we decided that this might be helpful for all of our members. So we are so glad you're here. And it is really a great honor for me today to be able to introduce Laura. She is married to a trauma surgeon and she has 5 children. She's also a lifestyle coach and has her own podcast, Married to Doctors, and I highly recommend it. It's a great podcast. She's also on Facebook, so you can follow her there after this call. And Laura, I'm just so honored you're here. Thank you for saying yes to us today, and I'm going to let you take it over.
Thank you. I'm super thrilled to be here. If you haven't already gone to menti.com on your phone or on another tablet, please do so. It will allow us to be interactive during this presentation, and I think we will all get more out of it if we participate. So you're just going to go to menti.com, and this is the code. It's going to prompt you for a code number, and that's what you're going to want to type in, 518850. And that will stay on all the slides. So hopefully if anyone comes in late, they can find where we are. Today I'm going to talk about meeting the needs of physician spouses and partners. And I find a lot of times that in many ways we feel like, okay, so I've checked off this list. I have all I wanted. Why do I still feel down, right? Why am I still upset? And so I have some presentation objectives for today. One of the first ones is to just recognize that many of the feelings we have as physicians, spouses, and partners, these are feelings that are shared by many other people, and we are not alone in having some of those feelings and thoughts. And the second intention of today's presentation is to understand, our needs as spouses and as human beings really aren't that unique. But there are certain circumstances in medicine that are unique. And so we're going to talk about those. And then finally, I hope to have time to share with you some of the work that I do with coaching and helping people with their thoughts and the power of replacement thoughts. So we'll be getting into a little thought modeling as time permits. But first I need to get to know you guys. So just for funsies, if you're on Menti, go ahead and answer this question for me. Who's your favorite Batman? And we'll see if all this technology works. Is anyone on or able to answer?
Once again, just go to your phone or to an iPad or open up another window in your browser and just put in menti, menti.com. And once you get there, put in 518850. And that way will allow you to interact with this presentation and answer questions.
Yeah. So I'll give you just a minute to see if anyone wants to answer. I can even go in myself, make sure it's working.
Those who are just joining us, we say welcome. If you will go either to another browser, or if you have an iPad or something next to you, you go to menti.com and see, and we're doing questions with Laura from that website. And the code you'll see on the top of your screen is 518850.
All right. So the Batman results aren't coming up for whatever reason, but these are working. Yay. So where are you currently living? It looks like Lubbock is winning. So the way this slide works, where we have the most people from will be the largest print. And so we'll let everybody take a few minutes, and I'm glad to see this slide is working. Sorry about the Batman one, but this one's more important anyway. Wichita Falls. So I actually lived in Burke-Burnett, Texas from 2nd to 6th grade. So
Yeah.
I know where Wichita Falls is. Longview Temple. Looks like San Antonio has the most people on the call at the time. Got someone in from Texas, Abilene, H-Town, or Quarantine City. That's funny. Okay, Houston. All right. Nice. Well, I'm so glad you guys are taking time to be with us today, and appreciate you guys inviting me to be here. I'd love to know what stage of medicine, kind of where you're at. So if I need to tweak this presentation to be more meaningful, I'll know just kind of where we're at. Oh, good. The answers are coming in. Glad to see this working now. It's like we have a lot of attending. Not seeing any students or residents at this time. Some other, I'm curious about the other, if that's pre-med or maybe retirement.
It's probably retirement.
Okay.
Mhm.
My husband just retired.
Okay. Okay, so good to know. Mostly talking to people that are already in the state, finished with their training stages and beyond. All right. And finally, very important, how'd you come to Zoom today? How are your feet? What is on your feet? How are you guys doing? Lots of sandals, some sneakers. Oh, someone's dressed up. Heels, wonderful feet. Nice nails. All right, sandals are the popular choice. Yeah, I imagine so. It's July after all in Texas, so makes a lot of sense. Socks and slippers, good. We're all at home. So it's one nice thing about not being able to meet live is we can come a little more practical shoes, right? Come in practical shoes. All right. So I want to just, before I get into the presentation, let you know who I am. As mentioned, my name is Laura McElderry. I do have a background in teaching. I taught junior high and high school. I taught the family and consumer science classes. I taught sex education. I taught parenting classes. I have taught a few classes at the university level too, but mostly my experience has been with public school. And then I love to speak and have had opportunities to speak at various speaking engagements for physician spouses. It's been about 2.5 years since I created a free resource for physician families, and that is the Married to Doctors podcast. On the podcast, you'll find over 140 episodes of all types of topics, ranging from finances to relationships to one of the popular episodes was called How to Not Raise Spoiled Children. And that one got a lot of attention. I interviewed my son once about moving when he was older and how he was doing with that and what it's like to be a physician child. And so there's a variety of episodes on there. I would encourage you to utilize that as a resource. It is free. You can listen on my website, or you can also subscribe to the show on whatever podcast player that you prefer. If you're a podcast person, but don't be intimidated if you're not. You can listen on the website, no problem. So here's a question for you. Feel free to guess which of the following are true. Our family grew from just 1 child to 5 children during training. Is it true that my husband, Josh, switched specialties twice and attended 3 residency programs? Is it true that one of our kiddos had a brain tumor? Is it true that we had 6 major moves? Is it true that I faced clinical depression at some point during the training? Okay. So the answer is all of those are true. All of them are true. There were many things that happened. We grew our family from just 1 to 5 boys. Our second son, Ivan, here, he did have a brain tumor during medical school. And that was an entire experience to go through. My wonderful husband is in trauma and critical care surgery, but he's changed his mind a few times. He actually started out in surgery after match and then decided to do pathology, then went back into surgery and finally did trauma critical care. So because of that, we attended 3 different residency programs. We lived in a bunch of different states and had the opportunity to live in Ohio and Wisconsin, as well as New Mexico and Arkansas. Arkansas is kind of our home base. That's where we did medical school, and that's where we actually met. And so these are just some pictures of my family. Yes, I did struggle with depression at one point during the training as well, and was able to work through that. And that's something that I love to discuss with others too. So are you guys seeing red lines on your screen?
Yes.
Okay, I do not know what the red lines are. I have no idea what's making them. It's not my mouse, so maybe it's, I'm not sure what's causing the red lines. But anyway, I'd love for you to answer this question. So what's the hardest thing for you as a medical partner? And I listed some of the common things that I hear in coaching physician spouses, but I would love to hear from you as well. Quality time is a big one. Yeah. Good. Yeah, these are things that come up often in my coaching. Quality time is a huge one. Also, not feeling appreciated for the things that you do. I coach a lot of people through career transitions and moving, as the physician lifestyle often requires moves from where you get into medical school, from where you match to where the job opening is. So good. And for those of you choosing other, I'll have a time later in the presentation where you can submit those. So thank you for sharing. All right. So for this slide, what's something you love about being in a relationship with a doctor? So I always think it's good when I kind of ask like a hard question, or one that like may put our mind to, you know, thinking a little bit negative about what it's so hard, like to counterbalance that out with a thought about how much you know, that there's also good that comes from these relationships. So I would love to hear from you. What are some of the things you love about being in relationship with a doctor? Okay, the respect that comes, that they're caring, that they're helpful to others, that they're smart, that you share similar passions, interesting conversations, having an equal partner. Oh, very good. Someone who chooses a career that complements mine. He's smart, he's interesting, he's helping others. My husband has lots of integrity. We have interesting conversations. We share similar passions in terms of social justice and public health. Love that. All right. A lot of he's helping others. He puts energy into fun family time and entertaining as he does being a physician. Very good. Again, respect and intellectual equal. Nice. I feel great pride for my spouse, being part of a medical community. These are all really wonderful. And again, I apologize for these red lines. I don't know where they came from. As far as I can tell, it's not on my end, so I don't have a way to get rid of them. So sorry about that. We will press forward. So the needs and wants of physician spouses, you know, they are the same for pretty much any humans in relationships, but circumstances can sometimes make it harder. And I'd like to start out and just talk a little bit about what are some of the common wants and needs in marriages. So at survival is when we have, it's just the bare bones, right? Like the church or the state recognizes the fact that you're in a relationship and a committed relationship, but you're not necessarily like even getting along at this point. It's just that you're not going through the process of divorce. You are legally, technically married for the sake of this. For safety, so safety is when you start to work to make a home together. You're more honest. This is more of sharing financial details with each other, providing safety for each other. And then I added, you know, in a medical marriage, you put plans in place for worst case scenarios such as disability or death, so that you know that your loved one is taken care of. Love and belonging is the next stage up. So this one, you know, you're generally kind to each other. You express that love in various ways. You're both able to both give and receive affection. And in medical marriages, to me, this is the stage where you start to really give your loved one the benefit of the doubt. So if they didn't show up for the birthday dinner, you don't question their motives or why they didn't show up, and you give them the benefit of the doubt, knowing that they would like to be there too, but that they weren't able to be due to their work obligations. For esteem, this gets even higher into mutual respect. This is the stage where you start to have contentment with who you are, with who your spouse is, and where you don't question their journey in medicine at all. And then finally, actualization would be respective goals and identities. The whole is greater than the sum of its part. And in medicine, neither partner feels less than or like a shadow spouse. All right, I'm going to stop my share and start over and see if I can get rid of these red lines because they're bothering me. So stop my share. Ha, it worked, yay. Okay, I'm happy about that. Okay, so yeah, actualization is of course where we want to go. I loosely based this on, you'll probably recognize Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and just put them in for what I thought marriage could look like. So I'm just kind of curious, if you had to rank your marriage right now, and this is anonymous, so feel free to tell the truth, where are you at? So again, actualization was that highest level. Survival is you're technically married. Ooh, someone is actualized. Way to go. So one advantage I have with this group is that many of you are further along. So I asked the question earlier, many of you are in the attending or even retirement stage. And so I imagine that many of you have worked through some of the issues that come up often in younger medical students and residency stages. And we do have a few that are saying they're still in the love and belonging or the survival stage even. So a little bit of struggling, which is certainly common. I mean, I work with physician partners all the time. And it's interesting too in marriages that I think a little bit of ebb and flow is normal. So, you know, if you feel that you're in one stage today, maybe there's been times in your relationship you felt you were doing better or times when you were doing worse. So good. So many of you seem to be doing quite well. So that's encouraging. So as I mentioned, needs for a physician spouse are the same, but some circumstances can make it a little more challenging. So here's my big ugly slide. What do I mean by these circumstances? Well, it could be any of these things, right? It can be the debt that comes out of medical school, especially for our current graduates as residents, tuition continues to increase. We have a lot of time demands. We have a new pandemic, which is causing some public mistrust. We have moving away from family. And then we have like, on these thought bubbles, I kind of put in like different things that people have come to me or that I've struggled with that people have said to me like, well, you must be so lucky you married a doctor, or some people are just always identifying you as your physician's partner, and you can start to feel like without them, you couldn't stand on your own and have your own identity. And that can be a painful thing. Also, like, there's a lot of assumptions, right? There's a lot of assumptions about our finances, about our lifestyle that probably are not accurate. So if you're comfortable, go ahead and share with the group like a circumstance or challenge that's kept you from like maybe leveling up in your relationship, if you will. Like, go back to it and see if any come in. Yeah, thank you for sharing this. Understanding we both have time constraints, and different circumstances, that the circumstances aren't greater. Oh my gosh, you can never fight medicine. She was always the first mistress. I have a true story about that one. When my kids were home throwing up and my husband anyway, whole story. It was one of our biggest fights because no matter what's going on in the home front, you know, a kid throwing up, well, are you keeping them dehydrated? They're probably fine. My patient across the street is like coding or whatever. Yeah, I totally get that one. You can't compete with medicine, and that can be quite difficult. Hard to feel valued when job is more important. So similar thought there. Sometimes hard to feel equal if you're not an MD. Yes. In fact, I actually did an episode on talking at dinner parties when you are not in the medical field and you try to have a conversation with someone who is. Sometimes there's not a lot of interest in your life, and the conversation tends to revolve around medicine rather than other things in the broader world. Yeah, here we go. Here's the career one, right? So I do a lot of career coaching, not being able to pursue career. Ooh, this is a really sad thought. So feeling like I can't level up because I leveled myself down, I can see that that would be very painful. Recognizing the huge transition. Oop, it blinked on me. Here it comes. Between training and post-training and recalibrating home responsibilities. Yes, this comes up a lot. You know, we get in routines when they're, depending on when you came into the relationship, right? So for Josh and I, we got married when he was still an undergraduate. I'm actually a couple years older than him. So I was a teacher and working. He was working on that undergrad degree, and he might go to medical school when we got married. So then he took the MCAT and was accepted, and definitely can understand that. Those transitions are huge. And what we end up doing to take care of the household during medical school and residency, if you're with your partner during that time, and then later as they become an attending, looking at their schedule. For some, the schedule stays similar. For others, the schedule gets harder. And for others, the schedule gets opens up more free time. And so regardless of which one of those things it is, the conversations around household tasks and sharing of childcare and things like that are very important conversations to have. And that's one thing I do in my coaching is help people through those. He's at work so much and I'm home and we're worried about COVID. Listening, COVID-19. Yes, COVID-19 has taken over. That is definitely an issue with many of our physicians right now. Just because my thing isn't saving lives, it's still important to me. Yes, it is important. Let me grab one more here. I finally figured out if I click on it, it comes up and doesn't scroll on me. Sometimes hard to feel equal if you are not. Okay, yeah, we talked about that one in the dinner conversations. And this one is so similar. So it's hard to feel valued when his job is more important. So I hope that in reading these, you will recognize that a lot of the feelings and thoughts that you have are common to physician spouses. And I love this list because even though many of you said, you know, that you were doing really well on the little marriage pyramid that I put up, we still find that we have sometimes some underlying hard feelings to medicine or towards our spouse. So many early on in relationships, I had to put this in here because I thought it was kind of funny, but you know, we kind of think it's going to go like this, right? Like we think, oh, we're going to start out and and then once we get, you know, past medical school residency into attending life, you know, we're going to reach this like apex of total bliss without a care in the world. And this is how many of us set ourselves up for disappointment, right? Whatever stage we are in, we make a false assumption that when we get to the next stage, things are going to magically improve in our relationships. And if there's one thing I could teach you, it's that it is completely possible to have a good relationship at each and every stage here. And it's completely possible to be in a miserable relationship at any stage here. So this stage that you are at does not have a direct corollary with your satisfaction in your relationship. So there's a lot of internal conflicts going on with the physician. Physicians are superheroes. They have a lot going on, and we know this, of course. Physicians often think that they care about their families, they care about their careers, they want to be home for special events, but they know that it's not happening. They also have a lot of pressure to keep coworkers happy and superiors happy. And a lot of times that's tied up with just the workload. But in some cases, things like letters of recommendation and matching and promotions or making partner. These are all very stressful situations that they find themselves in. Physicians frequently complain about not having time for themselves. And if it's not a dual physician relationship, many times the physician feels like my spouse really can't understand what I'm going through. And the partners of physicians also have our internal conflicts, right? We have the internal conflict of I care about my family, and we also care about our partner's career. We want them to be home for the special event, but we know it isn't happening. And we also have this thought that I always have to be the one that gives. I always have to be the one that understands and keeps the partner, the physician partner happy, keeps the kids happy, keeps everything in balance, right? That often falls to us. Likewise, just like that physician, we feel that we don't have time for ourselves. And we also have the same thought they did, that my spouse can't understand what I'm going through, right? So the physician feels like my spouse can't understand me, and the non-physician feels the same exact way. The physician can't understand my point of view either. So what are we going to do? What are we going to do when we have these feelings and we know that we want to be happier, we know that we want to think more positively, but we have these belief systems that are so ingrained that we're just accepting them as like gospel truth and we can't move on. So what are we going to do? And the first thing that I would say is we have to learn that our feelings are caused by our thoughts. I'm going to check my time here because, okay. So I have about 10 more minutes to get through some information here. So this is just a very basic thought model, actually has more pieces, but for the sake of this particular presentation, I cut it down to 3 main parts just to get the bare bones in for y'all today. So you start, when you do a thought model, you want to start with your circumstance. It's very important that you keep your circumstance very neutral. It doesn't want to have any emotion or drama attached with it. It wants to be something that could be proven in the court of law. From there, you'll go to your thoughts. I explain thoughts to my clients as just sentences that come across their mind, right? Some people see them in type or text. Some people almost see them as like people carrying sandwich signs walking across a stage. Okay, thoughts are just the sentences in our mind. And then feelings are what come from the thoughts. So when we think something, it usually causes an emotion. And for the sake of thought models, when you're talking about an emotion, we want to try to limit that to 1 or maybe 2 words, okay? So we want to keep that a very simple answer. So I wanted to share with you how this actually works. Just a few days ago, I was coaching a client and she came to me and she was extremely upset because her husband's in residency and he was told that his 2-week vacation was starting Monday. Now, previously he had been told that it would be like in October and they had plans to travel to see some family overseas, but they were worried about that working out anyway with COVID and it being more complicated. She had recently had surgery. They were having a water leak at their house. They had a lot going on in their lives. And husband comes home and says, hey, honey, by the way, they've redone the schedule. My vacation's actually starting Monday. I have to take 2 weeks in a row starting Monday or I lose my vacation. And we all know that during residency, that vacation is absolutely golden. So of course, they were both upset. He was upset because it wasn't going to give them time to make any travel plans. She was upset because she had had this surgery on her leg and that was limiting what she could do. And the overall feeling that she had from this situation was a sense of frustration and powerlessness, right? I think she was also dealing with just like a feeling of being disrespected, and that one of the other thoughts that she had was that, you know, the residency program doesn't care for its residents. It doesn't take time to recognize the impacts that it has on a family when you up and change vacation, when you have such limited vacation during the residency years. And so understandably, she was upset. And what I did was I worked with her to break this down. So first we had to just be able to write a circumstance without so much emotion. So what we came up with was, okay, your husband's told this week that vacation's going to start on Monday. And your thought is that's unfair. And then your overall feeling is one of frustration. And I tried to help. I first asked my client, I'm like, how can you think better about this? And she tried very sincerely to think better about it. She's like, well, could be worse. You know, we couldn't get vacation at all. And she's like, well, we do live near a beach. So at least he can go do some things during his time off, even though she couldn't because of her leg. And she said, you know, at least I guess it's good. He's here for my recovery. He'll take out my stitches, you know. He can maybe help with the house and the repercussions of this leak that we had, right? So she was trying her best to see the silver lining. And this is what we often try to do. We get bad news and we try to find those silver linings on our own. And it can work, and sometimes we're better at it than other times. The problem was none of these thoughts were really changing her underlying thought, which is, this is totally unfair, right? So it was a step in the right direction, but it wasn't quite as far as she wanted to go. So working together, we came up with additional thoughts. And I'll share a few of these with you. For the sake of time, I won't read them all, but one of the thoughts we came up with was sometimes vacations aren't the best, and that's okay, right? One of them was, it's possible we'll have wonderful vacations in the future. One of them was, I'm willing to believe that we both want to connect during this time. Because that was one of the things she was struggling with, is that they weren't getting any connection during the vacation. I asked her then to choose the one that was most believable to her, because whenever you start to do these thought models, you'll want to choose something believable. If it is not believable to you, it will not work. And that's why I am like the master brainstormer with my clients, and I will come up with so many different thoughts for them to choose from. So notice that the circumstance doesn't change. We want to keep that the same. But then when she plugged in, it's possible we can enjoy this week despite it all. It allowed her to have a more hopeful feeling. And that feeling then spurred an action, which was beginning to make plans. And the ultimate result was that they would, in fact, enjoy their last week a lot more. What we think is so powerful, and as we learn to embrace new thoughts, it not only changes the way we feel, but it also changes how we end up showing up in our lives. Whenever you go to do a thought model, if you get stuck, some of my favorite words to use are but, and, or it's possible, right? So just adding the qualifier, like it's possible that, you know, and trying to spin it more positive. For but, you can say what's negative, but da 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 da. And you can also use and or. And for the sake of time, I won't give examples, but I'm always happy to answer questions later about that. Let me give you another one real briefly here. So someone came to me and circumstance was dual careers. And the overall thought was basically, you know, my spouse doesn't have any empathy for me. Like they don't see the importance of my career. And the feeling of that was really this feeling of isolation from the spouse, because it felt like almost like they were competing and that they just didn't get each other, right? So she came to me really feeling isolated, not feeling like there was any empathy. And my client was trying with her thoughts, you know, she was saying things like, well, we're fortunate to both have careers. We're fortunate to have have our education. You know, we do have a nice life. We have many things we're grateful for. We are both successful. Like, isn't this in and of itself enough to make me happy, right? And this is really the ultimate question, right? People often are like, why am I not happy when I have everything I thought I would be, right? That's the title of my presentation. So again, this is where I love to work with people and brainstorm, what can we really believe? And so we came up with a list of many things that she could plug in as a replacement thought for her thought. And the one that she chose out of all of those to try to plug back into her thought model was that we are good at connecting when we try. Her circumstance didn't change. They both still had demanding careers. But by telling herself, remember, she showed up saying he has no empathy. And she went from that to believing that we're good at connecting when we try. And just that idea of knowing that they do have good connection when they try was enough to help her start to feel some excitement. And then that excitement feeling is going to lead her to a better action. She is going to show up in her marriage more of how she wants to, from that feeling of excitement and wanting to be together, instead of we just don't get each other. So I just want you to know, as I wrap up here, the feelings that many of you have are common in medical marriages. So you're definitely not alone. I don't want any of you to ever feel like you're the only one on earth that feels that way. That is not true. And our needs are not that unique, right? Like, we're human beings like everyone else, but some of the circumstances that we face as medical families really can make it challenging at times to have our needs met. And finally, please remember, your thoughts are going to create your feelings. So allow yourself to brainstorm up the lists, come up with many new thoughts, and then evaluate, is this a thought that you can believe? I like to tell my clients, it's almost like trying on a hat. Like, just keep trying them on and see which one resonates with you. And when you find the one that resonates, hang on to it and embrace it. Tell it to yourself. Some people like to say it out loud. Some people like to write it down. Some people like to read it daily. You want to find those thoughts that help you feel better. Yeah, the time has gone so fast. I was asked to stop at 1/4 till, so we're right there at 12:46. I want to thank you guys so much for being here, and happy to take questions. Also, if you'll leave some feedback, I will come back later and we'll read all of these, and would love to be in touch in the future if I can help any of you, or if any of you have questions about the presentation or about how thought models work. I'm going to go ahead and stop my share and let you guys tell me how you want to do questions and answers.
Okay, before we start questions and answers, if everybody could turn on their video, we want to take a picture of this wonderful group and today's presentation. So if you could share your video with us, if you go to the bottom left-hand corner and you'll see stop video or start video, and everybody turn on. We'd love to have your smiling faces, and Pam's going to take a picture of all of us. Laura, thank you so much. That was wonderful. We really appreciate your insight, and you yourself being a medical spouse, you also understand, you know, all these feelings and emotions that go through. And so thank you so much for your words of wisdom. That was great. I presume Pam has your contact information, or do you have maybe a slide that, I know that your podcast is available, Married to Doctors.
I'll put it here in the chat.
Okay. And, but we really appreciate your time today. Thank you so much. That was fantastic. Pam, are you getting a picture of all of us?
Yes, I did.
Okay, great. Do we want to put questions in the chat? Is that how we want to do that, Pam?
Let's go back and forth. If someone wants to raise their hand, well, take people who raise their hand, and also people can put their questions in chat, so we can go back and forth between chat and people asking questions in person. So whatever you feel most comfortable with. If you feel more
Okay.
comfortable asking a question via chat, please do so. If you feel more comfortable raising your hand and being called on, do it that way. So we can give both
Okay.
options.
Anybody want to raise their hands? Libby, can you raise your hair? Okay. Anybody have a question? There's 4 in.
I promise you, I've talked about everything with clients. There's intimacy, money, stress, COVID-19, making decisions about kids going to school. Oh my goodness, there's a lot going on right now for sure in our communities. Judgments by others, in-laws, household division of labor, feeling like a solo parent. There is so much that that we go through, and I'm happy to answer any questions about how the thought model works or
Okay, Laura, this is Pam, and I'd like to ask a question regarding how to deal with negative emotions during this pandemic. Because there's a lot of stuff around us, a lot of stress, a lot of uncertainty, and I think it creates more stress on the medical family, no matter what stage you're in. And do you have any advice for us as far as how do we deal with our negative emotions, or during this time period? Because I think it brings out a lot of different challenges, and how do we build our personal resiliency during this time period?
Yeah, I love that question. So good. So in the chat box, I'm just going to type, so the circumstance is COVID-19, right? And then we have thoughts about that circumstance, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the first thing you said is that, what did you say? Now I forgot. You said it causes a lot of uncertainty, right?
Yeah, I think it may for a lot of people. Just a lot of our members are home and with children, or just lots. They can't see their grandkids. They're all facing a lot of different issues. But how do you deal with negative feelings that might surface during this time period when you may not be able to reach out quite as easily? Or I thought, how do you use your thought model to deal with a negative emotion as it relates to our environment right now?
Yeah. So again, I'm typing this out in the chat, but I'll say it as well. So if the circumstance is COVID-19 and the thought, is it causes a lot of uncertainty, then what we're likely to feel is stuck, and that's how many people are describing it, right? Like, I have so much indecision right now. I don't know what is right. I don't know how to decide anything. We have lots of uncertainty and lots of feeling stuck. And so for this particular thought that there's a lot of uncertainty, what we would need to do is say, okay, what can we think, right? And this isn't like, with a circumstance like COVID-19, the point is not to go from like here 180 degrees to the other side, because that would be frou-frou, unbelievable, not sustainable, and it wouldn't work because we wouldn't buy into it. So what we need to do is we need to come up with a thought that's going to work for us. So some thoughts that we can have with uncertainty is just things like, there have been times in my life when I didn't know how things were going to work out. And we got through it. Or you might try to think, even though there is uncertainty, there are some things that are certain, and I will focus on those. And then you can get into more specifics. So you might say things like, even though it's uncertain when I will get to see my grandchildren, it is certain to me that that relationship is important. And that's what you can have certainty about. You can have certainty about the value of the relationship, even if you have uncertainty about what that relationship's going to look like. And then that can give you a greater peace of mind. And then from that certainty, you can then build out your actions. So if you know you're going to be close to your grandkids, even with the uncertainty of COVID, what's that going to look like? And then that can open up your mind to the possibilities of ways that you can be certain that you stay close to them, even though you can't, even though there's uncertainty about the in-person visits. Okay.
Thank you.
That can work a lot.
Sue has a question.
Yeah.
Yes.
Sue,
Sue?
you want to unmute?
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Laura, for coming to us and sharing all this with us. I want you to know I've been listening hard, and I really like all the things you've said and everyone's participation. I do have a confession. I caused the red lines. I'm sorry. And I did it as I was reeling in a fish, and I threw the phone in my back pocket and then realized I caused the red lines. I wouldn't feel right not letting you know that. But it was a keeper bluegill. So,
Well, congratulations. I love
all
that
right, thank you.
enjoying
Thank
your
you.
day. That's awesome. That's so funny. So thank you, Sue, for your confession. Did anyone else have any questions? Diane had put in the chat, it sounds like it's really important to tease out the difference between thoughts and resulting feelings 100%, and the difference between thoughts and circumstances. Because what happens is we often believe our thoughts as truth. Like we accept them as the truth, and we need to stop and question those and see if there's other things that we can think and believe that are going to produce better feelings, and in turn, better actions and better results.
Hey, Elsie.
Yes, my question is, and by the way, I want to thank Laura for such an excellent presentation. And I think an issue that I sometimes have is people really feel that you have it all, you have no problems, and that you really owe the world an apology for your status. And I would just like to know from Laura, what is a good way to answer someone who says, well, you should be okay, you should be comfortable? How do you answer a question like that from well-meaning friends and relatives, family?
Okay, that's a good one. So I'll put it in the chat again. Thank you for your question. So let's take this circumstance of someone says, you should be okay. All right. And then we have a thought about that. And what would you say you think when someone says that, Elsie?
Well, I think I'm human. I have many the same life issues as everyone else. You know, concerns about house, car, issues of health. So there's really no major difference for basic life.
Mm-hmm. So your thought is, I'm human, my life issues is the same as theirs. They see me as different.
Correct.
Okay, very good. And when you think that, how do you feel? You feel like a little irritated, or?
I do. I feel a lot of irritated that the person has not put very much thought into that, into their assumption.
Okay. Okay, and that's actually another thought we could do a model on, that they don't think about their assumption, right? So very good. So what, if you were one of my clients, Elsie, what we would do is we would say, okay, let's think about what you're thinking about. And, you know, you're kind of judging them on why they would ask the question, right? So, what are some other thoughts that you could have?
And you thoughts as
As
to
far
when
as to the person that says that to you, like if you think that that they don't see you as a human, right? If they don't see you as the same, then that causes like this separation. And so, but what's interesting here is you're actually not seeing them as the same either, because you're not seeing them as someone who can understand you.
correct.
So maybe we need to flip it. So if they can't see you and understand you, how can you better understand them? So you may need to think they have no experience in the medical world, or all of their assumptions are false based on what they've heard, right? Or you might
Right.
think, of course they don't get it.
Oh, wow.
They haven't lived it,
Yeah, perfect.
right? And if you
Right.
start to think some of those things, then I would say here your goal would be to give them the benefit of the doubt, with then your feeling result is going to be closer to them instead of driving them away as a friend,
Okay.
instead of distance.
Perfect. Now, is there one word I can say? Is there like a 1 or 2 word answer for just an immediate calming and resolution and closure?
Well, I mean, I think if you could just look at your friend as a human without that experience. So as far as what you could actually respond to them, so in the moment, you could just say, it's interesting you think that.
Perfect. Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. Yes.
Say that's an interesting opinion. I see it differently. You know,
Yes.
it might open up some conversation for you.
Yes.
You can even say, so tell me more about why you think that. And if it's a really close girlfriend or even family member, you might have a really good open conversation there and be like, you've known me 20 years and you really think that? Like, do you remember when? You know, it's not that you're wanting to like get in an argument with them, but a lot of what people say, especially towards medicine, it's just so much in our culture. You know, there aren't many careers. I would argue there's no career like a doctor, because it's the most stereotyped career that exists. We don't stereotype doctors, I mean, lawyers in the same way. They have some stereotypes, right? But they don't
Right.
have the same kinds that we get. I mean, if you are a doctor's wife, you probably have no career ambition, drive a really nice car, and there's just like hundreds of stereotypes. It's ridiculous. And it has to do with our culture. It has to do with our media. It has to do with, you know, maybe 100 years ago, physicians were super elite and had lots of money. But in today's world, physicians struggle financially. And that's true, especially with COVID. I think, just in another subject, I think COVID has helped tear down some stereotypes about physicians, which has been one kind of nice thing I've seen. But anyway, that's another subject for another time. So, but I hope that answers your question a little bit.
Yes, and I think the most dynamic word you used was struggle, because I don't think people understand the sacrifice that we make. So that's a good word to just have as an anchor. So thank you.
Yes, for sure. Glad you asked.
Anybody else? Last question. Well, thank you everybody for being on the call today. We are so glad you joined us. And Laura, we just say thank you, thank you. This has been really enlightening and very good. We also can identify, and so thank you so much for your time today with us and your wonderful presentation. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to be here. And, you know, if anyone wants to reach out, just my website's marriedtodoctors.com, and I would love to hear from all of you. So yeah, be in touch.
Great, thank you. Okay, guys, thank you so much. And our next call will be in August, so be on the lookout for that. It is going to be on finance, but it's going to be from a psychologist on the psychological issues of finance. He is a financial planner, but he goes through the perspective of psychology of finances. So be on the lookout for that email, and thank you for joining us today. You guys have a blessed day.